Yeah, so there was last Grisaia stream. Yeah, I would have never expected the bond between Kazuki and Yuji. Yeah, Kazuki being Yuji's deceased sister. I never would have expected that bond to involve some incest, but holy shit it did. And there's actually quite a few more sentences that were actually left out of this cut version that I'm playing. So there were some more explicit details on exactly what went on in the bathtub and exactly how Yuji's sister kissed them in the uncensored version that I didn't get to see in the cut version. Yeah, by the way, if anyone wants to see the uncensored version, I don't think I'll be playing that in its entirety for comparison's sake, but Boss Core in the Weebathon does have like an entire playthrough of Fruit of Grisaia with the uncensored version, the 18+ one. Except for like the H scenes, those are honestly cut out. But you do have like all the uncut dialogue, just no H scenes. The fourth day in the valley, as expected, another hot one. As early as mid-morning, we felt about 90 degrees out, if not worse. Spending time in the lush, humid jungle under such conditions would drain our energy surprisingly quickly. So we were told to limit our investigation of the area to the early hours of the day, before the temperature reached its peak. Investigating the area might sound nice, but to be perfectly honest, we were just foraging for food. Everyone had long since burned through the 3 days' worth of food distributed to us on the first night. From today on, the system was changing. We'd be getting our daily rations from the captain every morning. In that morning, she handed me a handful of rice, less than a cup's worth. That and maybe a quarter of an onion. This was to make do for me and Kazuki both. When I tentatively asked if this was supposed to be one meal, she firmly repeated, "This is for the day." It wouldn't have been enough for anyone, let alone girls with growing bodies. We were expected to make up this shortfall by heading into the forest and procuring our own. As a result, most of us were forced to devote the majority of our active time to searching the woods for food. Fortunately, my partner Kazuki had a small and appetizer diminutive frame would suggest. And even when all I could offer was a thin gruel of rice and mountain weeds, she ate steadily away without a single complaint. If anything, the problem lay in my direction. This is no good. That wasn't even close to enough. Since your body is large, Amane, your basal metabolic rate is likely high. I imagine you expend a good deal of energy, even at rest. Kazuki glanced over as I sucked regretfully on my grilled chopsticks, gave a little laugh, and hopefully compared me to an American gas guzzler in human form. I know it might be slightly unappetizing to pick up my leftovers, but you like the rest? It's your share, Kazuki. I was honestly all too eager to gobble down any morsel offered me, leftovers or not. Even so, it would have been a dire mistake to accept Kazuki's kindness. If our pair was a body, I was the hands and feet while Kazuki was the head. No matter how healthy the limbs may be, they can't move unless the brain's functioning. It's fine. I'll drink some tea and tough it out. Of course, our tea was nothing more than hot water flavored with onion skins. It wouldn't fill my stomach, to be sure. But from what Kazuki told me, the skins were rich in antioxidants that would reduce the stress on my body, providing something of a detox effect. As I slowly sipped away at the reddish-brown tinted water, I looked around the campsite. Unsurprisingly, many of the others were sitting listlessly on their silver sleeping mats, their arms wrapped around the growling stomachs. Hey, is it okay to just let them do that? Clearly, I wasn't the only one longing for something to supplement their inadequate meals. A group of 3 girls had sat themselves down in a tight circle with Sakuma-senpai at their center. They were playing cards with a deck somebody must have brought along, gambling for small snacks and pieces of candy they had been secretly hoarding. It was a common sight lately. Oh, what's the harm? They seem to be enjoying themselves. Why don't you join in? Kazuki put her head in their skirt pocket and pulled out a single chocolate bar. I'll provide your stake, so if you win, we'll split the profits 50-50, alright? Huh? But if you lose, let's see, how about we have you skip snacks today? don't have any friggin' snacks in the first place, and if someone's going to play, shouldn't it be you? The game wouldn't be much fun if I were to play now, would it? Also got my hands full with the wounded. Koide-san's looking after them alone at the moment, but it seems she feels rather uneasy when I'm not around. Is it really okay to be playing games at a time like this? How do we know, like, none of them are gonna try and cheat Amane or Kazuki here? Wonder how many times someone tried cheating at this point. Precisely because we're in such a desperate circumstances, it's all too easy to get caught up in ugly thoughts when you're bored. And people need to relax and let off steam. Running around pointlessly all day long only makes your stomach emptier. Also, don't think of this as a mere game, as my partner to defeat is no longer an option for you. Maybe nothing more than a card game, but I expect you to approach with steadfast determination to gain the maximum possible profit, even if that means trampling others into the dust. Determination? Yeah, with a dwindling food supply and food being literally at stake here in this card game. Okay, I'm not gonna go as far as to say this is like Loser Goes to Shadow Realm, but it's getting there. We're sort of getting to Loser Goes to the Shadow Realm with the card game here, and I assume... I'm gonna guess they're not playing Yu-Gi-Oh! I'm guessing it's a deck of playing cards. I don't really get it, but I'll give it my best shot. I look forward to your report of overwhelming victory. What card games does Amane know anyways? Overwhelming victory, huh? Setting the bar a little high, aren't we? Well, I guess if you had talent like Kazuki's, it might well turn out that way, but it seemed like a downright unreasonable expectation to place on an ordinary person like myself. Of course, if I had said as much to Kazuki, I'm sure she would have given another talking to. Victory is secured only through the steady accumulation of effort and unflagging attention to minor precautions or whatever. I was pretty sure she already told me something very similar, in fact. Let's see. I had actually been making something of a habit of jotting down Kazuki's words of advice over the days we'd spent together. Do your utmost to avoid placing yourself in a position where you'll be forced to rely on chance. When the time comes to use a card, play it without hesitation. Betray before you're betrayed. Once someone is betrayed, you never trust them again. Don't let anyone realize you don't trust them. Remember to chew your milk before you swallow? Okay, one of these things is not like the others. Would it be alright if I joined in too? Fine by me, but do you have something to bet? I got this chocolate bar. No kidding. You were still hiding something that good? I wasn't particularly hiding, I mean, this is actually something Kazuki had with her. It's Kazami's? She doesn't seem to like the sort to have a sweet tooth. Kinda surprised me she had candy on her. I couldn't deny it seemed a little out of character for Kazuki to be carrying chocolate around. That said, at this point I wouldn't have been surprised if she pulled a pigeon out of a hat. She was clearly capable of anything. Anywho, chocolate is a very welcome contribution to the pot. Take a seat. Oh yeah. What should we do next? What's going to become of us? How long before we can go home? Immediately after the fall, every word coming out of our mouths boiled down to a variation on one of these three sentences. As of that morning, the litany of unanswerable questions had finally trickled to a halt. By our fourth day in the valley, we started to adapt psychologically. Harsh as our environment was, we had our tents to shield us from the elements and our sleeping bags to keep us warm at night. As we began to find comfort in such things, we were gradually growing calmer. With the provisions distributed on the first day gone, and our daily rations reduced to a bird's helping of rice, it was only natural the topic of our conversation shifted from such vague anxieties to the concrete topic of food. I could really go for some cheese right now. While studying the cards she'd been dealt, Kaneda-senpai muttered those words to no one in particular like some kind of prayer. Her love for dairy was well known to the team. When practice ended, the freshmen took orders for their obligatory snack run to the nearby convenience store. She'd always request something cheesy. No point in asking for the impossible, you know? I do understand that, but... Come on, I'm pretty sure you're just talking about how you wanted something sweet. Actually got some of that, don't we? Candy, gum, sweet pretzels, and looky here, Amane's brought some chocolate. What a thoughtful present. Gotta agree. Chocolate looks awful good right now, it's the sweetest thing we've got. 3 sets of eyes focused intensely on my bar of chocolate. It almost felt like they weren't seeing anything else. For a moment, I physically cringed. If all 3 of them were to pounce at once, I would have been completely unable to defend myself. As I bit my lower lip and swallowed nervously, Sakuma glanced up and abruptly burst into laughter. Settle down there. It's fine. True enough, we've been eating nothing but nasty bitter weeds lately, so we're kind of starved for a little sweetness. Doesn't mean we're childish enough to start a fight over a little chunk of chocolate. I'm seriously worried they're not going to be able to just stick to those words a week from now. If they're still stuck down here in like the next week. Why do I feel like if a week passes by and all the girls are still stuck down here, fights will break out over a piece of chocolate? Well, if Ozawa-senpai was here, it might be a different story. As she spoke, Ibuki discarded a pair of cards from her hand. True enough, Ozawa wouldn't have handled the situation well. Her juniors hadn't called her the Devourer Demon behind her back for nothing. Insensitive as it seemed, I couldn't help but think her instant death in the bus crash had at least spared her from otherwise inevitable agony. Perhaps she'd been lucky in a way. I'm thinking of it, what happened to Ozawa-chin's bag? Her bag? You know, that girl was always packing her bag full of sugary stuff, right? If we had that, I bet we wouldn't be lacking for sweets for a while. We gave all the personal belongings of the girls who died to Mr. Ochi as soon as we got them out of the bus. Which would mean the captain's gone in reserve after all, huh? Just then I glanced absent-mindedly at the chocolate bar in my hand and did a bit of a double take. Come to think of it, Kazuki was the one who retrieved Ozawa-senpai's belongings from the bus. Could this possibly be something Kazuki secretly swiped from her bag? What's wrong? Amane, it's your turn. Oh, right. Sorry. Instinctively apologizing for no particular reason, I pulled the furthest card on the right from Sakuma's hand. She chuckled softly. I'd taken the worst possible card off her hands. The Joker. If it's with you at the very end, you've lost the game. Okay, so this isn't Yu-Gi-Oh! Laminated playing card doesn't sound like Yu-Gi-Oh! To me. For a moment, the smirking clown staring back at me from the cheap laminated playing card seemed to be wearing Kazuki's face. When you get down to it, the captain and Koide pair is controlling all the food, right? You don't think they're stuffing themselves to give us their scraps, do you? From the cards I offered her, Kaneda pulled out the 8 of spades. I'd sure like to think not. Whatever else you can say about her, Sakashi's got an unusually strong sense of responsibility. Pretty confident she's not the type to make herself comfortable at everyone else's expense. I wonder about that. Ibuki pulled a card from Kaneda's hand and discarded a newly formed pair onto the central pile. By this point, she only had 4 cards remaining. Sure, Sakashida likes to talk about responsibility, but when things go wrong, it always seems to be someone else's fault. The way I see it, she's just good at passing the buck. I can't stand her sometimes. There it is. Buki's can't stand catchphrase. You really do try your best to hate anything and everything, don't you? As Sakuma-senpai leaned over towards her, Ibuki's cheeks flushed slightly red. She throcked out the remaining 4 cards in front of her roommate's face as if trying to keep her at bay. Taking everyone at their word like that is just soft-hearted. I'm not going to be someone's patsy. Maybe some saintly idiots out there can get cheated out of their money and just think, thank goodness there wasn't a sick child after all, but I'm not one of them. You're so cute when you're trying to be cynical, Buki. Incidentally, don't you think you should cut your hair already? If you got those bangs out of your eyes, you'd be even cuter. I don't even know if they have any pairs of scissors down here or anything. Mind your own business. I like this hairstyle. Just Jeez, don't touch me! Could you guys save the flirting for your private time, please? Wrinkling her brows and trying to hold back an imminent sneeze, Kaneda flapped her hand in the air in a signal to get on with the game already. Can't waste too much time. Thanks to Komori's dog, my parents got a useless mouth to feed, so our rations vanish even faster. Stuck up little mutt won't touch any of the wild plants we gathered either. Kind of think that aren't dogs meat eaters? I think they're omnivores, maybe. I've seen dogs out on walks in my neighborhood munching away at random weeds on the side of the road. They eat some veggies because an all-meat diet gives them nasty heartburn or something? We tried to give him some of that onion they handed out this morning, and he totally turned up his nose at it. You can't feed a dog onions. Doesn't it give them anemia? Really? Chocolate's supposedly no good too. Not that you want to waste any you had on a dog anyway. Well, yeah. I kinda told Komori something similar and ended up feeling a little guilty. Spent all morning wandering around the woods looking for something a dog might eat. Did you find any truffles or anything? Don't you need a pig for that? Either way, the dog's not the only one with problems. We're not going to last that long gnawing on weeds. Having waited 3 days, we could hold out another 7. That was Kazuki's estimate. We'd stay here for another week, sipping on weed soup. If our rescuers hadn't arrived by then, we'd have no choice but to go get help ourselves. Most likely, the captain was preserving a stock of food for that purpose. But when I said as much, Kaneda scowled dubiously. Go get help? How are we gonna do that exactly? As she spoke, Kaneda scratched irritably at the bandage wrapped around her forehead. The wound underneath must have been growing itchy in the humidity. We'll decide on a representative, give them a supply of water and food, and have them climb down the mountain. If we get off this mountain, we wouldn't be sitting around here. How is anyone supposed to get through that forest? It's not like there's a trail at the bottom. 5 minutes in there and you don't even know which way you're going anymore. Right, but that's why Mr. Oshii and the captain are still out there investigating. Sure, their little Surya mission sounds nice in theory, but it seems like the only thing they're accomplishing is burning calories. If anything, we should just have everyone wander off in different directions and hope someone gets out. But what about the people that don't get out? How'd you find them? Oh, that's not... We didn't have nearly enough provisions for a gamble like that, and we couldn't just abandon the wounded. There was only one practical plan: endure as long as we could on these meager rations, claw open a path to the wilderness that trapped us here, hope all the while for the arrival of rescuers. And then once our investigations yielded something in the way of landmarks, send off a representative with 3 days worth of food. Another 3 days passed, we could send off a second representative. By following the signs the first had left to mark the surest trail, they should make it further down the mountain. Lashing one short stick to the next, slowly but surely we would draw closer to our objective. This was an idea that had grown out of Kazuki's theoretical digital communication plan. If we could repeat this often enough, in theory we would eventually be able to escape, but there were no guarantees, and I found myself hesitant to explain. Can we not fight? That's an even more useless waste of calories anyway you look at it. Who's fighting? We're just having a discussion, right? Look, that nasty tone of voice is exactly what I'm talking about. No use in snarling at Amane now, is there? When the hell did I snarl at anyone? Kaneda, let's just drop it. You too, Ibuki. I've often heard the calcium deficiency makes you prone to fits of irritability, but at that moment, although all of our diets are badly unbalanced, the main cause of our crankiness was clearly the constant growing hunger we all shared. It's easy to be polite on a full stomach, as they say. In the end, we kept at our game of cards until Captain Sakashita and Miss Toroshi returned from their expedition. I finished with a so-so record of 3 defeats and 4 victories. In exchange for 3 to 12 blocks of chocolate from my bar, I obtained 4 pieces of soft candy wrapped in aluminum foil. Against the contrast of my slightly dirty palm and muddy fingernails, those spoils of war looked irresistibly beautiful. I brought one to my nose and inhaled deeply, with the bittersweet scent of strawberry wafting through the wrapper. My mouth was instantly overflowing with drool. There were 4 candies in my palm. If I popped one in my mouth right now, nobody would ever know. It wouldn't even be a net loss to my group. I would have lost 3 small pieces of chocolate and brought back 3 comparable chunks of sugar. As my thoughts raced and been through these calculations, I swallowed the spit in my mouth. but as it slid lukewarm down my throat, I came to my senses with a guilty jolt. It would be dishonest, unfair, cowardly to eat one now. Nothing less than the betrayal of Kazuki, and once I betrayed her, I'd probably continue to do so. That was a line I couldn't cross. Something on your mind, Amane? Hey, what's wrong? Kazuki, you're just playing dumb so you can tease me, aren't you? Whatever you're talking about. I'm afraid I don't understand in the slightest. It really seemed like a deliberately timed appearance on her part. But even if it was a coincidence, Kazuki's luck to appear at that exact moment would have been frightening in its own right. After one long deep breath, I jerked my head down in a bow of apology. I'm sorry, Kazuki. I was thinking about eating some of the candy without telling you. Goodness, how very honest of you. If you'd kept silent, I wouldn't have had the first idea either way. That's exactly what was wrong with me. I held up the soft candies I'd won in the game and the remains of the chocolate bar to Kazuki. Cupping her hands gently over mine to receive them, Kazuki flashed me a satisfied smile. It's quite alright. I left everything in your hands precisely because I understood you wouldn't be able to do such a thing. Here, up and wide. Huh? Say ah? Is that close enough? Kazuki deftly unwrapped one of the candies she'd received from me, then plopped a small white pillow into my half-open mouth. Is it tasty? Yeah. The candy was unbelievably sweet to my tongue. My entire mouth was instantly flooded with the taste of sugar, and the next moment it felt as that vibrant sweetness was seeping into my veins and spreading throughout my body. That single piece of candy was so delicious I was actually trembling. Kazuki watched affectionately as I rolled my eyes up in bliss and swirled the candy clumsily around my mouth. Then popped another of the candies into her own mouth. And with the words, goodness, it really is tasty, smiled in pleasure. And again, I think sugary snacks like this might taste even better when done stealthily by yourself. Why do you say that? That's how it works with my little brother. He's not the abstemious one, at least superficially. He doesn't even act particularly happy if you give him a favorite treat. He prefers to hold on to it so he can be alone and gobble it down in secret. When I asked him why, he said jumping for joy might encourage someone to snatch it away from him, and it's easier to relax and enjoy it when he's alone. He already understands that people are most vulnerable in moments of celebration. Not that I quite expect anything less from my brother, but it's quite a penetrating insight for his age. And that warped, submissive aspect of his personality is adorable in its own right. I kinda get it. Maybe not. Well, ignorance may be bliss on this one. No reason to identify with those of us who are helplessly awkward even with our own family. That brief word resonated painfully inside me. It felt as though an icicle had unexpectedly pierced my chest to the core. What are my parents doing right now? Worrying about their missing daughter? It was a little past 5 o'clock. Normally, I would have been heading home from after-school practice right about that time. I tend to come home a little hungry from practice. The refrigerator would be packed full of sweet drinks. On the kitchen table, more snacks I could possibly need were always waiting for me. After a satisfying snack, I could head to the bathroom and take a long, luxurious soak in steaming hot water. Then cool down with a cup of cold milk, idly distorting my voice in the electric fan while my mother prepared dinner. Without even asking, my parents offered me more food than I could eat. I accepted it without a second thought, often without even a word of thanks. That stupid, ungrateful ignorance filled me with bitter shame. But at the same time, comparing myself then to the filthy, frightened girl who just quivered ecstatically over a single piece of candy, I couldn't repress a surge of miserable self-pity. Amane, why are you crying? Huh? I'm not crying. You're crying. Take a look around you. As instructed, I looked around the area only to find it deserted. There's no one else around, it's just you and me. There's no need to hold back. The instant those words left her mouth, I felt the tear glands swell up in the corners of my eyes. My self-restraint crumbled like sand. Crying wasn't going to fix anything. Nobody was going to swoop down and rescue me. No matter how much I grieved over my own powerlessness and ignorance, there's no do-overs to be had. What was done couldn't be undone. I want to go home. I want to go home, Kazuki. Hiding my twisted, wretched expression behind the palm of my hand, I crumbled to my knees on the spot. Without a word, Kazuki drew near, wrapped her arms around my head, and hugged me against her slender stomach. Pathetic. Utterly pathetic. When I was still a child, there was a girl among the neighborhood kids who'd break into tears at the slightest thing. I remember thinking of her as a nuisance, stupid, useless crybaby. If I weep, somebody will come help me. Somebody will take pity on me and solve my problems for me. The transparent self-interest behind her actions was just as irritating as the blubbering itself. But now, I've become just such a worthless, moaning crybaby, rubbing my runny nose against the belly of a girl considerably smaller than me, sobbing into her skirt. It's alright. Don't worry about it. Listen to me. It's going to take time, but I'll get you home safe and sound in the end. I promise. As she spoke, Kazuki took one arm from around my head and began to softly stroke my hair. My family wasn't with me. There's no way such a pointless, clingy little breakdown could have been anything but irritating to anyone in this place. They were all suffering just the same, but even so, Kazuki didn't push me aside. She held me gently in her arms and accepted it all, offering me soothing, hopeful words. That kindness was painful in its own right, but at the same time it felt like an irreplaceably precious gift. Aren't you sad, Kazuki? Don't you want to go home? Turning my face up from Kazuki's belly, I meet her gaze with watery eyes and mumbled a distinctly childish question. She gave a little laugh, her stomach shaking lightly against me, and answered, "Don't worry about me, I'm a genius." Of course I want to go home. I'm rather anxious that my parents may be bullying my little brother in my absence. Closing a single eye, Kazuki furrowed her brow and pursued her lips. If it was going to turn out like this, I should have imitated Komori-san's example of the dog that smuggled my brother along in my bag. A failure on my part. But I'm pretty sure that wouldn't have worked out too well for you. No, that wouldn't have been possible anyways, right? So even geniuses fail, I guess. Of course they do. It makes a genius the ability and determination to transform such failures into a bump on the road to success. Those who never realize that will stay mediocre throughout life. Geniuses have it rough in their own way, huh? If you're composed enough to be worrying about my struggles, perhaps we could bring the crying to an end now? They do say a woman hasn't really come into her own until a grown man cries into her stomach, but you're an adolescent girl and I'm beginning to find it somewhat annoying. You're pretty cruel, Kazuki. That's an unfortunate interpretation. If it were possible, I'd be perfectly willing to tuck you into bed and read you picture books until you cried yourself to sleep, but... We have neither a bed nor picture books at the moment, so I'm afraid my hands are tied. Yeah, sorry. I think I'm okay now. It's kind of weird. I have no idea why I broke down like that all of a sudden. Well, isn't it because she really misses home? Make sure you lick the tears from your cheeks, alright? It's a waste of precious sodium, also. Kazuki reached out, took my hand, and dropped all the remaining candy and chopped it onto my palm. I'll leave these with you. They're quick, easily absorbed calories in a convenient package, which means they're very valuable. Keep them safe and do not touch them until I say you can. Understood? Okay. Got it. If Kazuki was entrusting me with such important provisions, it was clear she genuinely trusted me. I absolutely couldn't betray that trust. Biting my lower lip with this heavy sense of responsibility, I stared intently at the chocolate in my hand. Watching my reaction, Kazuki sighed slowly through her nose. I don't dislike that serious personality of yours, but please don't confuse your overactive sense of responsibility with your actual responsibilities. The habit of approaching everything as a trial to be stoically endured reminds me rather painfully of my little brother. People like that tend to die young, you know. What's the difference? Your responsibilities are the burdens you must carry. A sense of responsibility that leads people to shoulder weight they need not bear. Don't lose sight of that distinction. I don't really get it, but I'll do my best to act like I do. I don't get it, but I don't need to get it either. If Kazuki said so, that's the way it is. I was worried taking the easy path and letting someone else think for me, but honestly I didn't really care anymore. A clumsy idiot who tries to take a heavy burden on their shoulders won't achieve anything but catastrophic failure. I understood that just fine even before Kazuki drove the point home. For that very reason, I decided to obey her orders without a second thought. Kazuki told me I couldn't eat that candy without her permission, so I would sit on my haunches slobbering like a dog until she spoke the magic words. If permission never came, I'd wait out the years and carry them to my grave. In this situation where nothing seemed certain except uncertainty, the one and only thing I had come to believe in was Kazami Kazuki. Kept that thought to myself, since I was well aware she'd only often was sarcastic. Might you be mistaking me for a god in response? But at this point I probably would have answered, huh, you're not? That's what Kazami Kazuki became for me. The 5th day in the valley. Let's begin from the conclusion. Today it rained all day long. To be honest, I had no idea rain could be this unpleasant. The constant drumming of water against the tent was unexpectedly loud, enough to make conversation difficult, and the light entering the tent was far dimmer than usual. Thanks to my strong astigmatism, everything seemed fuzzy and indistinct, so it was extremely difficult to do much of anything. But the bigger problem was the rainwater that oozed up from the ground beneath us and the damp chill it brought. This morning I woke up to a real double whammy. The psychological jolt of emerging from a familiar nightmare and the physical pain of a throbbing headache. I piled 2 mats onto my sleeping bag last night, but when I came to it I was soaking wet. My body temperature had fallen as I slept, and chilled blood running through my veins that numbed the blood vessels in my brain. Even after waking, my calorie-starved body struggled to warm itself. My teeth chattered uncontrollably in my mouth, and I stared reproachfully up through the tent of the merciless sky. I'm so cold, Kazuki. Changing out of my wet clothes might have helped matters somewhat if my spare outfit hadn't been soaked through as well. I hit on the idea of a hot drink after a few minutes, but it was pouring outside the tent. Starting a fire would have been difficult. You mean impossible, almost? And more importantly, the fierce sound of rain striking against the canvas had thoroughly drained me of the willpower to even poke my head outside. Want another cup of onion tea? Apparently unable to just sit back and watch, Kazuki had ventured out in the midst of the downpour for my sake, bringing back boiling water for our onion skin extract beverage. The stuff was never really worthy of the name tea, but by now we'd let those same skins seep so many times it was a little more than faintly yellow water. Of course, I was plenty happy to have even that, and Kazuki's act of mercy contrasted so strongly with my own cowardice that I felt about ready to cry with gratitude. When I glanced over at her sitting there, her wet hair matted like a stray dog's coat. I couldn't exactly fire off a casual, sure, refill would be nice. My hand still gripping the empty cup, I slowly shook my head. This storm is awful. Yes, indeed, there was quite a lot of loud thunder just before dawn, although it seems it wasn't enough to wake you up. I guess I was vaguely aware of some loud sounds, but yeah. Even when the roars jolted me awake for a moment, my listlessness quickly overwhelmed me again. Simply didn't have the energy to wake up that early. Immediately after the fall, I'd been unable to sleep through the night, and I dozed lightly with frequent interruptions. The morning often seemed to sneak up on me before I knew it. But lately that changed dramatically. Once I managed to doze off, it was very difficult to wake up. More and more, falling asleep felt like sinking into a thick bed of mud. I guess I'm just tired? I think you're exhausted more emotionally than physically. Also, the biggest factor is you're simply beginning to grow used to this place. When you're sleeping in an environment that's both harsh and unfamiliar, your unconscious mind is not only processing memories, but also maintaining a vigilant awareness of your surroundings. Your eyes will spring open at the smallest sound. It sounded plausible now she mentioned it. In that respect, Kazuki was an ideal teammate. Once asleep, she'd lie so still in her bag I sometimes half worried she suddenly died in there. I never once heard her snore or grunt in her sleep. Lately, Kazuki had been sleeping on a very regular schedule. We started preparations for dinner at 6:30 p.m. and finished our meal by 7. Or what passed for a meal at this point, at least. By 8, I'd noticed her stifling small yawns, and around 9 she'd come out and declare herself sleepy. At 10, she would crawl into our tent, cheerfully spread out her sleeping bag, take off her uniform, and leave it neatly folded at her bedside. In the instant her head hit the rucksack she used for a pillow, she'd exhale noisily just once and go silent. Within 10 seconds, I hear the soft regular breathing to indicate she'd fallen asleep. Of course I couldn't flip the switch to sleep mode quite so easy on such a predictable schedule. My conversational partner lost, I had very little to do with myself late at night. So until I managed to fall asleep, I'd stave off boredom by staring at Kazuki's sleeping face. After a few minutes in dreamland, she'd occasionally make faces in her sleep, most often throwing a brow and a caricature of troubled thought, sometimes smiling dopely at nothing in particular. Kazuki, do you have dreams? When I grow up, I'd like to be a nurse or a florist. Running a little pastry shop would be lovely as well. That's not what I'm talking about. In the first place, what's with the half-assed attempt at pretending you're some run-of-the-mill girl with cutesy little dreams? Forget being a nurse. You'd be much better suited to the role of a black market surgeon with a tired old doctor's robe. Florist? Cupcake peddler? Try con artist. Maybe the founder of some sketchy cult? So by dreams you're referring to the ones we see while asleep? Of course I dream in that sense as well. Today I found myself reliving a moment from soon after I entered our school. When I was somewhat bewildered by the confusing self-service system in the cafeteria, for me such dislocated memories of the past seem to be the most frequent. I can't say I have many of the more symbolic flying through the sky variety. No kidding, lately I've been having a lot of dreams where I fall from a high place. I've had dreams of the sort ever since I was a child. Okay, so it's not something that just started now. It wasn't something that started since the bus plunged off the cliff. Most often I'm falling from the top of a cliff. As the ground beneath my feet crumbles to nothing, I plunge downward and stare in quiet composure at the earth far below. My thoughts are oddly calm. I guess I'm going to land right about there. So as long as I keep that detached perspective, I never seem to hit the ground. But eventually it occurs to me that I'm dreaming. In the next moment, I slam into the earth and jerk awake in my bed, my whole body rigid with shock. What might a dream like that signify? Kazuki's answer was brief. It means you're uneasy. Other than falling, my most common dream was probably of the running variety. This morning, I found myself fleeing some vaguely defined but menacing pursuers. A countless number of black shadows hot on my heels. I was pushing my way desperately forward through oily, thick air, dragging my strangely heavy legs along the ground. The illusion was unusually persistent. Even when I realized it was a dream, it kept its hold on me. Just as I began to beg myself to wake up, my eyes slowly opened to the sensation of a throbbing headache. Apparently it was already 2 p.m., or past that. The rain was still hammering fiercely down. By now the tent was half submerged in muddy water. There was nothing to do but curl myself in my heavy, wet uniform, rubbing arms and trembling from the cold. Although I was doing nothing at all, my stomach was still growling. And although my stomach was growling, it was still raining outside. Thinking of the time it would make to start a cooking fire, I lost all motivation to try. What were the other girls doing right now? All of them else? The rest of them must have all been quietly enduring the storm in their tents. The steady drumming of the rain was the only sound I could hear. The cries of the cicadas, so vigorous and persistent when the weather was clear, were utterly gone. So too the eerie shrieks of the unseen birds hidden in the treetops above. Kazuki? Suddenly wanting to hear another human voice, I called Kazuki's name. There's no response. When I looked over, I found Kazuki sitting on her sleeping mat. This was before, but at some point her eyes had fallen closed. Right, it's 2 o'clock. Every day Kazuki would take a nap sometime between 2 and 3 in the afternoon. It was never more than a quick 15-minute dose, so the first few times I just thought she nodded off out of exhaustion. But it happened every day at roughly the same time, so it soon became obvious this little siesta was part of her schedule. You might have to sleep sitting up, you know. Nobody's going to complain if you lie down like a normal person. Of course, considering the minor flood we had going on here, that probably wouldn't be a much more relaxing option at the moment. This was a grave problem indeed. You'd have to think up a countermeasure of some sort before it happened again. But the damp floor isn't the only inconvenience brought on by the rain. For one thing, writing in this diary isn't easy when the pages are wet. And unfortunately, I've been in the grips of a much more serious dilemma for a little while by now. Probably thanks to that big mug of onion tea this morning, I'm currently enduring a desperate need for a visit to the bathroom. The urge to pee was painfully intense, requiring constant effort to restrain. My pen trembled against the diary pages as I wrote. I surveyed the interior of the tent, but found nothing that might serve as a makeshift umbrella or raincoat. When this rain lets up, I'm going straight to the captain and proposing we cobble together an outhouse with a roof. Making a special note of that here so I can't possibly slip my mind. The 6th day in the valley. After a full day of unrelenting rain, we woke to a blessedly clear morning. Our life here has begun to assume something of a rhythm. Initially, our mornings were a bit chaotic, with people crawling out of their tents at random times. But recently, everyone's been waking up by 6 AM at the latest. Although it would be more accurate to say they were being forcibly woken up. Naturally, the one beating the stragglers out of bed is none other than my partner, Kazami Kazuki. Of course, that doesn't mean she literally goes around thrashing them. That would be much too inefficient. The recipient of her violence is the bottom of an anodized aluminum cooking pot. 15 minutes before the 6 AM wake-up call, Kazuki dangled the pot in question for a tree branch and began to wail away on the metal surface with a wooden sword she's nicknamed the Punishment Rod, producing a piercing series of clangs. 15 minutes until morning, muster! And shouted a wake-up call in full military style. What's the deal with that punishment rod anyway? Tyler, it's nothing more than the crude wooden sword we use to flip watermelons as part of our recreational activities at the camp. And when someone as tiny as Kazuki branches it around, it looks less like a weapon and more like a prop for some corny slapstick routine. Ten minutes after that initial wake-up came the signal for folding hammocks. Apparently we're on an old-fashioned battleship now? After 5 minutes to roll up our sleeping bag and mat, the pot received another vigorous thrashing for the 6 AM muster. All hands lined up in front of the tents for roll call. Obviously this is all pretty annoying and at first there were a lot of complaints, but forcefully informed that fixing a regular schedule of activities in order to reset the body's internal clock is the fundamental basis of a sound health maintenance plan. Nobody had enough of a counter-argument to voice open objections. And so every morning the entire group gathers obediently in a line for the daily physical. Or as the seniors refer to it behind our backs, Professor Kazami's tour of inspection. These health checkups amount to little more than a quick interview about any ailments, followed by any words of caution the doctor has to offer. But considering our isolation and general cluelessness, Kazuki's sense of knowledge has been something of a reassuring guidepost for many, so this daily advice is fairly well received, for the most part. As a comparison to an imperious doctor swooping around their hospital might suggest, Kazuki has a retinue on these rounds. I tag along beside her from one patient to the next, taking notes on the memo pad we devoted to medical records. The summary I jot down at the end of the page doesn't change much from day to day. No major problems given the circumstances. To rephrase, everyone's suffering from varying degrees of malnutrition, but they're not about to keel over and die today or tomorrow. After the general inspection, we turn our attention to those who suffered external injuries, that is, Kaneda and the cut on their forehead, as well as Sakurai and her lacerated abdomen. We perform what treatment we can, cleaning the crudely stitched wounds with a disinfectant made from wild herbs, then replacing their bandages with one we washed clean and sterilized in boiling water. And finally, we stop by to visit Haruka-san in the large tent to wipe the sweat for her feverish body. Well, this part's pretty much exclusively my job by now. When the morning rounds are finished, at least, I seek out Mr. Ochi and report everyone's health acceptable, while Kazuki heads to Koide-senpai's tent. The daily rations for each individual are being adjusted depending on the severity of their malnutrition symptoms, as diagnosed by Kazuki. The distribution of the day's food, or as Kazuki now refers to it, chow time, is held at 7 AM. Until then, everyone's supposed to take care of the laundry and air out their bedding. In particular, sleeping bags have to be thoroughly dried in the sun on a regular basis or they'll be sprouting clumps of mold before we know it. After passing on the medical report, I return to our tent, grab Kazuki's bedding along with mine, and lay them out on top of the tent to dry. Finally, I head to the stream to take care of our combined laundry, and make my way to the captain's tent with our rice cooker and receive our daily rations. The routine started normally enough this morning, but at this final step we ran into our first serious breakdown in the process. One that will probably have lingering effects going forward. I arrived slightly early at the captain's tent where she manages our entire food supply in cooperation with Mr. Ochi and her partner, Koide was waiting inside as usual, but today her face was ghastly pale. What am I going to do? Did something happen? Huh? Or short one. What am I going to do? Short one? What are you talking about? Number of carrots. Koide-san, are you sure you didn't miscount? Why not check one more time? Carrots? As they explained the situation to me, there had been a total of 11 carrots carefully stocked away. On Captain Sakashida's orders, when that number fell to 10, they were planning to halt distribution and hold the rest in reserve. But when Koide-san counted this morning, the 11 carrot they'd been intending to divide and hand out to the group was missing. So starting today, we're not getting any more carrots? That's not especially important right now. The problem lies in the fact that one of the carrots disappeared without explanation. Disappeared? Carrots don't have legs, so it didn't vanish on its own power. Which would leave two possibilities. Either she simply miscounted or somebody ate it. It wasn't me. I didn't touch them. It's true. I can't stand carrots, for one thing. Please rest assured, I'm not suggesting you're to blame. It's just that if you didn't miscount, we're going to be faced with a far thornier dilemma. What do you mean? In all likelihood, someone else stole the carrot. Therein lies the real problem. Stolen by who? That question is going to lead to a great deal of trouble. Conducting a criminal investigation in a claustrophobic situation like this would quickly give rise to widespread paranoia. To be honest, spiraling into disunity and mutual mistrust would be an absolute catastrophe for us under these circumstances. Everyone suspects everyone else and is suspected in turn. That's never a pleasant feeling and it rarely ends well. It certainly wouldn't help that our group was composed of half-starved teenage girls if the criminal were discovered. There's no doubt she would have faced a vicious denunciation session. And if the investigation failed, it was all too obvious that reign of condemnation would instead fall on Koide for allowing the theft from our food supply to take place through incompetence. So what can I do? Help me, Grisaia-san! This wasn't my fault, right? I mean, I did just exactly what Chiaki-san, what the captain told me to do! Calm yourself, Ri-chan. Look, you can't call her that. She's older than you, isn't she? Since when are you childhood friends? Listen carefully. Fortunately, the only people who currently know we've misplaced this carrot are the three of us and the thief that took it off our hands. In other words, I believe this won't come to light so long as we keep silent. Brushing the dirt under the rug? You trying to make us all accessories to the crime? That's impossible. Mr. Roshi and the captain knew how many carrots we had left too. Even if we don't say anything, they'll find out eventually. It wasn't a proportionally large theft, but carrots are easy enough to count. Its disappearance would be all too obvious. In this situation, there are two solutions. Perhaps ways that would be the more appropriate term? There's the fun way and the boring way. Which would you like to hear? The fun way! How about you tell us both? Let's start with the fun plan. It's a nice and simple too. Just below this proverbial popsicle stand, grab all the remaining carrots and make a run for it. Run? Huh? Why? To where? When you get right down to it, your greatest fear about this whole affair is that you'll be severely scolded by the captain, yes? In that case, why not flee into the woods with all the carrots and try your luck in an escape attempt? If you're lucky enough to succeed and summon help, no one will blame you for taking a few carrots. Quite the contrary. I imagine you'd be viewed as a heroic savior, earning the perpetual adulation of all involved. That's your fun way? That sounds fun, doesn't it? No. No, it does not. Shucks. Go shuck yourself. Please take this seriously. Unless you help Chiaki-san, it's absolutely gonna kill me. Incidentally, what's the boring way? It really is quite dull, you know. A little numerical alignment, nothing more. What's that supposed to mean? In short, there's no problem if we have the same number of carrots we did yesterday, correct? With those words, Kazuki picked up a kitchen knife and casually lopped off the tip of the nearest carrot. With quick, firm strokes, she sliced the carrot into pieces and started writing the next one. What are you doing? Don't play around with our precious food! Just calm down and watch, see? Here we are, 11 carrots. Huh? When I looked down at the cutting board, the missing vegetable somehow reappeared. I counted the sliced carrots again, and slowly and carefully. There were 11 in total. Anno just took little pieces off each of the other 10? That's how she did it? This is bizarre. How did you do it? I just took a little bit off the other 10. There's a rather famous puzzle that works on the principle. You're not familiar with it? If you cut a number of similar objects into sections and resort them, the total area seems to increase, or oppositely, after adding a piece, the area seems to stay constant. It's a very common spatial brain teaser. Close enough? Now you mention, I think I might have seen a wooden puzzle like that in some souvenir shop. It was most likely some variety of Pentomino's puzzle. In any case, what I did this time is a much simpler trick. A careful glance should be enough to see each carrot is missing a single section. Yeah, that's what I was about to say. If we had more carrots, the proportion taken off each would be smaller, so it'd be harder to detect. God, creepy! You're a witch! A witch, I say! Freaky! How very rude. If you're too uppity, I might just transform you into a mouse, you know? I don't care if you're a witch. Thank you, Kazami-san. I'll repay you for this someday. That's quite alright, Riki-chan. No need to worry yourself about that. I'm telling you, stop calling her that. You have no respect whatsoever for your elders, do you? Was Koide-senpai aware exactly who she just put herself in debt to? Even so, Kazuki said not to worry about it, so maybe a trick like that doesn't even register favor for her? Personally, though, I thought her smile at the moment was saying I don't expect you to be of much use to me anyway, and it sent a bit of a chill down my spine. Either way, I sure as heck didn't have the courage to ask Kazuki for clarification. The 7th day in the valley. Status quo unchanged. The end. No, I guess that's too extreme for an abridged version. We'd now spent a solid week shipwrecked. Naturally, no one was running around like chickens with a head cut off anymore. Our lives had taken on the repetitive quality of a long-running television show as they came to a pale imitation of its former self. The kind you keep watching every week out of sheer inertia. Although we were thoroughly sick of eating, or even looking at, the foul plant soup that had become our primary substance. Its proportion of our diet was only rising. The amount of rice distributed to us was decreasing steadily with each passing day. And even the edible grasses that had seemed so infinitely abundant at first were vanishing with alarming swiftness from the picked-over areas near the entrance to the forest. Everything was in short supply. About the only thing we were gaining more of from day to day was boredom. As we'd grown accustomed to life here, there was a lot less pointless effort being expended, and a lot more time spent sitting around quietly preserving energy. Other than that, I suppose we at least had an effectively limited supply of water from the spring, but since we were all using it heavily, the water needed to be boiled before we could drink. There were a number of people who found this delay irritating, sometimes skipping it entirely, myself among them, but Kazuki strongly recommended that we heat the water to 170 degrees for at least a minute, in order to kill the bacteria likely proliferating in the stream. And in fact, it seemed that chronic diarrhea had begun to spread among those who continued to drink the water raw. Diarrhea? That reminds me! Ah, what on earth? How many times do I have to tell you not to shout out of nowhere like that? I mean, for your heaven's sake, you absolutely never learn, do you? Or perhaps it's some twisted little game of yours. See how far it can make me jump! I don't know, it just honestly sounds like Kazuki's spitting bars right now. How many times do I have to tell you not to shout out of nowhere like that? I mean, for heaven's sake, you absolutely never learn, do you? Or perhaps it's some twisted little game of yours seeing how far it can make me jump? She's spitting bars. Oh yeah, sorry. For the time being, how about you take a breath? You're gonna die. Do that one more time and I'm gonna spank you. Firmly. Look, I said sorry, right? More importantly, hear me out for a second. What is it then? Let's make a toilet! Why would we go for to create a breeding spot for a pathogenic... Oh no, if we use gasoline first, I see. That's one plus for starters. Kazuki? When I tentatively called her name, Kazuki instantly thrust up her right index finger. This was her signal for wait 10 seconds. If I ignored this command and kept talking, I knew all too well Kazuki would fire back with a forceful "don't spit out gobbler worthless noise" at me when I'm not ready to listen. Yada yada, I quickly learned to respect the signal. By now, one finger in the air from Kazuki and I fell instantly silent for 10 seconds. You could practically see my tail drooping between my legs like a dog given a firm command to wait. Honestly, I felt a little perverse admiration at how well she trained me. Yes, I think it's a good idea. I had no idea what sort of calculations Kazuki ran through in those 10 seconds to reverse her initial decision. Maybe she projected the pluses and minuses of building an outhouse through the next decade or so. Whatever the case, I had her permission to proceed with the toilet construction plan. That said, I headed off to ask Captain Sakashida's opinion on the matter, admittedly for the sake of form more than anything else. What did Kazami-san say? Huh? I expect you ought to approve of this little plan before reading the word of it to me, right? Well, yes. Then why not do as you please? Can you not sleep at night unless you push the responsibility for every step you take onto my shoulders? That's not really what Every student club in our school had its factional disputes. In particular, the sports teams were notorious for their bitter infighting. You could fill a book with the petty spats that raged every year. Our basketball team was no exception from the rule, but it was somewhat unusual that our conflicts never got too serious. The reason for that lay at the top. Captain Sakashida's charismatic presence would be a nice way to spin it, but to make a long story short, everyone was too afraid of her powerful family to risk making an enemy out of her. But out here, her parents' influence was no longer a prop to her authority. And as our focus now to the problems immediately before us, some potential future reprisal was the last thing on anyone's mind. In other words, the captain's position was growing uncertain. Our education in that school for rich young ladies might not have provided us with many practical skills, but there was one noticeable exception. It had instilled in us a sharp sense of smell, that is to say, the ability to sniff out the winning horse in any given race. The smell of a clear winner always attracts a crowd, even when they lie at rest. Over the several days we spent in the valley, the number of people surrounding Captain Sakashida had visibly declined. Her only consistent companion was Koide Ritsu, bound to her by a simplistic sense of obligation. Forget it, Amane, let's just go. As I stood stock still in front of the captain, trying in vain to find some responsible words, my fellow freshman, Ibuki Haruna, pulled me away by the hand. Ibuki Haruna, the only child of the president of a corporation headquartered in Kasukabe, that imported and sold luxury foreign cars. In Kazuki's opinion, decidedly insolent despite her total ignorance of the ways of the world, listless and lazy to boot, an exemplary child of the modern era. And in the opinion of her dorm roommate Sakuma, a total coward at heart, despite constantly acting tough, and she doesn't even realize everyone knows it. You know, you're way too much of a girl, Amane. I keep telling you, nice guys finish last. I don't know about that. Personally, the idea of gaining personal profit at the expense of being despised by others never really appealed to me. My mom always raised me not to be a nuisance to others. Live your life so as to earn folks' gratitude, not their scorn. You know my dad imports foreign cars or whatever, right? You have no idea the stuff he runs into. Like, Italians? They think about their work so differently from Japanese people. Half the time, the cars they deliver are a totally different color from what you ordered. Completely par for the course. And when you call to complain, you get the manager's currently taking a siesta or whatever. They can't answer the phone because they're taking a friggin' nap. Seriously. After calling them over and over at different times of day, you finally get a hold of the guy in charge, but he just goes, "We sent the cars exactly as ordered." Completely bold-faced, you know? When you tell them that can't be right, you got the car sitting right there in their bright yellow, they will literally say somebody must have repainted them on the boat then. Not our problem. Like, how stupid do you think we are? You know what a nice guy is? Someone who takes that crap sitting down like the Pats say they are. When you get down to it, calling someone a nice person is a pretty saying they're a weakling. It kind of feels like you're swinging a little too far in the opposite extreme. Nice person equals weakling. Trapped in the bottom of a gloomy ravine, we were all struggling to stay alive from day to day. Act like a soft-hearted good girl in such a harsh situation will only be taken advantage of. It was an extreme argument, even an immoral one, but I couldn't deny there was a kernel of truth buried underneath the bitterness. Ibuki had a definite dislike for soft-hearted people from the very beginning, and she was always the sort to be vocal about her distastes. But since the fall, the element of her personality had been growing more pronounced and acerbic by the day. Little by little, everything was growing warped. Without foods, our minds were robbed of composure, surely as our bodies were robbed of nutrients. Under such conditions, human beings lose their self-restraint. They slide slowly off the rails. I watched Ibuki quietly from behind as we walked. Her school uniform was seriously grimy, and not that mine was any better. No matter how diligently we washed our clothes, it was just unavoidable in this place. Ibuki had been one of the more fashion-conscious girls on the team, but these last few days she hadn't even been glancing in her mirror. Without warning, she came to a stop and turned back to face me. What were we talking about? Oh, the story about the Italians? Right, where was I? I think you already finished? Really? Sorry, seems like I was kind of zoning out there. I've been getting really absent-minded lately. What a pain. Ibuki, are you feeling alright? To a greater or lesser extent, everyone here had been losing weight, but Ibuki had been slim into the first place. She was etching into emaciated territory. Her arms were as thin as branches on a withered tree where they emerged from her sleeves. Ibuki, did you lose weight again? Yeah, probably. She laughed it off. Getting thinner and thinner even though I'm doing nothing at all. What was the point of all the hard work I put into these diets, but I found it impossible to crack a smile in return. Too bad I don't have a scale. It'd be cool to know how many kilos I've lost. Don't skip any meals, okay? You gotta eat. Eat? Eat what? Well, anything you can get your hands on at the bottom of a ravine here. When she asked point blank like that, I didn't have much to say. We both knew perfectly well there was nothing left to fill her stomach. Watching as I hesitated awkwardly, Ibuki gave a high-pitched little giggle and turned around and walked straight off toward her tent. Human beings are malleable. Our environment changes us. Dropped into a warp situation, we were slowly warping ourselves to match. Small personality shifts like Ibuki's were far from the worst of it. Our extended stay in this place had given rise to far more serious problems, some of which were rapidly becoming impossible to ignore. I do apologize, Amane. But could you go pick me some more medicinal herbs? Chameleon plants again? If you'd be so kind. Also, if you could search for something edible while you're out there, it would be a big help. I'll search, but... I'm not saying you have to stay out there until you find something. Just look around a bit as you gather the herbs. Please bring them to me in the large tent when you're done. The large tent, in other words, our little camp's sad excuse for a hospital. Kazuki was visiting us several times a day, conversing with and treating the wounded. Sakurai's wound had given initial indications of recovery to the point where she was able to move, but around a few days ago, it apparently began to fester. In fact, it was that very mobility that caused the problem. After many long days lying in that human tent, breathing air thick with the pus and sweat characteristic of a place occupied by the wounded, Sakurai snuck out in Kazuki's absence and bathed in the bacteria-laden spring. Oh no, that doesn't sound good. And with the wound exposed, right? That doesn't sound good. The gash in her abdomen wasn't so deep as to threaten her life, but it was by no means shallow. Thanks to her malnutrition, the laceration simply hadn't closed completely until it seems a bacteria invaded her body, infecting the wound. Fortunately, chameleon plants were one thing we had an abundance of. No matter how many I picked, they seemed to grow right back. As the plants like to grow in marshy, damp spots, all I had to do was look for places sheltered from the sun. Especially after a rainy day like yesterday, there would be large quantities waiting. Rain brought a number of other blessings apart from the chameleon plants. In particular, a large number of snails appeared in the forest. Mushrooms also sprouted up, but I wasn't about to thoughtlessly start grabbing at them. Kazuki severely beat into my head that a moment's overconfidence or trivial act of carelessness could prove fatal. Opening the lid of our rice cooker, I began picking a moderate number of chameleon leaves, careful not to take too many from any one plant. While I was at it, I grabbed a few snails as they crawled slowly across nearby tree branches. Every time I tossed a snail into the makeshift bucket, its shell hit the bottom of the aluminum cooker with a sharp little rattle. Hearing that sound drove home to the realization that I'd been reduced to viewing slugs as food, and the surge of self-pity abruptly welled inside me. Feeling the corners of my eyes grow hot, I sniffled in a futile attempt to hold my misery inside. Crying wasn't going to help anything. I knew that all too well, but the tears still came. Don't think too much. As long as I stay alive, I'll be rescued. As long as I don't give up, I'll get home. Empty words, but I forced myself to believe them. It was the only thing that kept my hands moving. It was the only way I could see going on is anything but ridiculous. I plucked a few dozen leaves from chameleon plants, and captured 2 snails when an unpleasant surprise pulled me back to reality. Glancing down, I noticed the start of my sock was stained dark red. A leech had latched onto the calf of my left leg. It hung suspended from my skin, round and fat with my blood. It seems snails weren't the only slimy invertebrates that had multiplied in the wake of the torrential rain. Normally I would have shrieked at the sight of the vile little creature. Probably I collapsed to my knees, weeping hysterically. Instead, I grabbed the leech firmly, peeled it off my leg, and tossed it into the trees with a detached mechanical calm that surprised myself. After removing the teeth still stuck on my leg, I carefully squeezed at the wound to wring out the leech's poison. Apparently it's called Hirodin. But now that I looked, there was a numb bleeding bite on my right leg as well. The leech had apparently already drank its fill and was nowhere to be found. For some reason, the collar of my uniform felt oddly tingly against my skin. My heart thudding with cold dread, I slowly, tentatively brought my hand toward the back of my neck. My fingers brushed against the fat, slimy body, and this time I screamed. Ripping the leech off my neck, I hurled it hard against the ground and rained a furious series of kicks down on it, but the thing just didn't want to die. As I ground the writhing leech into the moat of my heel, my own blood gushed out in little splurts from its smashed body. I was seized by such an intense, dizzying spasm of sheer loathing that I thought I might pass out on the spot. I couldn't take this anymore. I just couldn't. Lukewarm blood trickled endlessly down the back of my neck. I pressed my hand against the wound, but it just wouldn't stop. This trip was over. Just as I decided to head back, I casually glanced up at the sound of a slight rustling from above, and in the next instant, a number of leeches came, raining down from the overlapping tree branches overhead, aiming for me. Clutching the mess kit tightly on my chest, I ran stumbling out of the forest as fast as my legs would carry me. Listen very carefully, city dwellers. I'm willing to bet some of y'all have been known to say things like, I love nature, being out in the green heals my soul, or whatever, yes? If you ever find yourself in need of a broken nose, try repeating it when I'm in the room. Those tidy little trails you hike down, with their trim trees and color-coded maps and porta-potties and rest stations, that's an artificial playground for human beings. In that moment, I came to hate nature from the bottom of my heart. Get a hold of yourself. There are some people who would love to have this meal, you know that? When I returned to the mess kit covered in my own blood, I heard a snarling voice inside the large tent. Captain Sakashida's here? I hesitated for a moment at the entrance. Looking around, I saw the rest of the girls in the area were similarly frozen in awkward uncertainty, looking deliberately away from the tent, but clearly listening. What meal? Couldn't just do nothing. Maybe just nonchalantly popping in there would drain some of the tension within the air. Heaving a single heavy sigh, I braced myself emotionally and stooped down and passed through the open tent flap. We might have called it the large tent, but it wasn't exactly spacious as hospitals go. When I crawled inside the center of closely packed sedentary bodies, it was as thick as always. And today the droning of flies filled the air. This was a more recent development. Apparently the smell of blood and pus has grown strong enough to prove an irresistible attraction. No matter how many flies we drove off or swatted, there was always more to take their place. The interior was unevenly illuminated by sunshine flowing in through gaps in the tree canopy. I could see Haruka and Sakurai lying at opposite ends of the tent, attended at their bedside by Captain Sakashida and Kazuki respectively. Come on, eat up. You're going to eat this, understand? You have a responsibility to... No, this is an order. Eat it! Captain Sakashida scooped some gruel out of the Sierra cup in her hand and pushed a spoon forward. Haruka-san bit her lower lip and turned her face aside, rejecting the food outright. Don't be ridiculous. How many times do I have to tell you? We can't afford to put up with you being selfish right now. I understand that it tastes bad, but choke it down. I myself had heard nursed Haruka-san numerous times over the last week. She had never accepted much in the way of food, but the last few days in particular, she hadn't eaten anything remotely approaching a meal. With both legs broken, she was almost entirely unable to move. Spending all day lying down would tend to reduce your appetite. And when you happen to be lying down in the confined space reeking of pus and dirt and sweat, hunger pangs might well be less of a problem than containing nausea. The high fever from her fractures lasted 3 days. during which we were forced to keep her on a purely liquid diet, even after her temperature fell. The most she could keep down was a light rice gruel with practically no added ingredients. Even that watery broth she sipped very softly and slowly and in small quantities. Please, just stop. Have mercy. Haruka-san greeted the words through gritted teeth, her contorted expression begging for a reprieve. As she squeezed her eyes shut, small tears spilled from the corners of her eyes. Mercy? What on earth? Don't try and turn me into the villain here. You make it sound as if I'm bullying you. The captain jerked back the spoon and noisily slammed the aluminum cup to the floor in obvious irritation. The porridge inside was surprisingly thick with rice. Unlike her typical watered-down wheat soups, it was a legitimate gruel. Compared to the relatively healthy members of the group, the wounded needed more nourishment to help their bodies heal. They must have been receiving preferential rations. At a quick glance, there seemed to be as much rice in that one bowl as I received in a single day. If anything, you should be thanking us, you know. How can you talk to me like that? Or do you think we're giving special treatment to invalids who can't even work? Before the next angry words in the sequence could spill out of Captain Sakashida's mouth, Kazuki, who had been silently cleaning the stomach wound the whole time, finally interjected. You're attempting to force her to do something she clearly doesn't want to do. If that's not bullying, what is? Captain Sakashida turned to face Kazuki's back, glaring so fiercely I half expected her to pop a blood vessel. You're aware of exactly how precious this handful of rice is to us right now, aren't you? Yes, of course. Nonetheless, your approach to this situation is misguided. If Kazuki noticed the captain's furious glare, she gave no sign of it. Not even bothering to turn around, she continued treating Sakurai as she spoke. Seems you may have gotten the idea to lead under these circumstances. You need to become a forceful presence whose word is absolute. Perhaps you decided you can't go easy on anyone, however. When popular sentiment wants you to play the kind-hearted, compassionate leader in relation to the weak, isn't it more strategically sound to show them a bit of what they want to see? In other words, I should follow your example? Show everyone some sly, insincere facade? Do try following my example in the slightest part, yes. And you're somewhat dim-witted. You've picked up an unfortunate habit of trying to forcibly smash your way through every problem. Oh god, stop it, Kazuki! That was unpleasantly human enough to begin with. I really could have done without the nasty cold sweat now drenching my back. I believe it'll be quite alright in here without your continued assistance. Might I respectfully suggest you consider returning to your tent? I got something to discuss with you later. Would you mind stopping by my tent? Goodness, how frightening. May I bring Amane as long as well? I'm afraid I lack the courage to pay you a visit alone. Feel free. As she spat out those words, Sakashida's dark, angry eyes flashed over to settle on me. What? Don't get me mixed up in this. Do not get me mixed up in this, Kazuki! Pierced by the captain's loathing glare, I stiffened in the entrance of the tent like a rock, imagining to respond only with a terrified gulp. Maybe she realized how awkward I felt about the whole thing, maybe not. Either way, Captain Sakashida gave a little snort and pushed right past me and out of the tent. Kazuki? Kindly spare me the pathetic moaning. First of all, were you able to obtain the herbs? I did pick some. I quite quickly opened the mess kit I'd been carrying. At some point, the snails I captured glued themselves to the opposite side of the lid. Thank you. Kazuki grabbed a number of chameleon plant leaves from the aluminum cooker, crumbled them in her hand, and deftly began to apply them to the area around Sakurai's wound. Does it sting? Just a bit. But a little pain is better than the itchiness. Thank you as always. Amane's the one who picked the herbs. Thank you, Suo-san. You're welcome. Sakurai-senpai was placid and soft-spoken as always. Even in the fairly tomboyish basketball team, generally admires the greatest beauty in the group. I didn't know the exact details, but apparently her father was a famous stage actor and her mother a former idol singer. One or two such people. It was perhaps unsurprising that she turned out as lovely as she did. Against such a contrast, the ugly, jagged wound across her abdomen and its crude stitches were all the more painful to look at. Right, we're done. Please head out of the tent and get yourself some sun. I'm very much obliged to you. The presence of the wound must still have been a source of unease, if not discomfort, to her. As Sakurai slowly rose from the ground, her hands softly traced the gash from above the freshly applied bandages. With a brief, polite bow to Kazuki, she quietly crawled out of the tent. Even stuck in a mess like this, Sakurai-senpai's still really beautiful. It'd be best not to say that to her face. Seems she's convinced herself her looks are her only redeeming feature. Even words intended as a compliment might end up reinforcing her low opinion of herself. Really? In that case, the ugly wound to her stomach must have been a considerable psychological shock. I turned around to peer out at the open flap of the tent. As Sakurai slowly walked off in the distance, her shoulders seemed to be sagging. If nothing else, I suppose we should be thankful she wasn't wounded on her face, like Kaneda-san. To be sure, that would be even harder on her. But Kaneda herself didn't seem particularly depressed. Maybe she was just counting herself lucky to have survived. Oh, hi, Freeland. Trevor only, Castlevania 3, 28-4X is no longer if but one at this point. Let me check the Discord. Let me check the Castlevania Speedruns Discord. Did you just take my world record? Let's see. What did I miss? Let's see. Castlevania 2. Drac 1 claims another world record bid. Oh, so you were on 2854 pace on the run. Oh, fuck. And the run died there. I'm guessing you got the pendulum damage boost, right? The one where you get the lucky bat and you just boost off, and I'm guessing you got that. So, let me get this straight. I'm looking at the splits right now. Cyclops Behave, that's stage 7. So, yeah, it seems like you lost more than 7 seconds on stage 7, didn't you? And still could have beaten my world record. Yeah, I was very well aware of the fact that I definitely left some time behind on the table, but I didn't think I left that much. And even then, you were still on pace all the way up to Dracula. Good job, and I would have probably preferred to see that you got that record, to be honest. I mean, would not have been too disappointed about losing a world record. I mean, it literally took me 8 days to get that in the first place. Yes, it would have been nice to see that go to someone more deserving of it today. I mean, it will. It looks like it will at this rate, just probably gonna be some other day. It looks like it's gonna go to someone who actually spent more time. Then again, like, first half of Trevor Only is literally identical to the first half of Sypha. So, yeah, I did, like, run the first, like, 6 stages, not counting 2. I did already do runs of that when I was playing Sypha some time ago. Okay, where's the not like this emote? I thought your Castlevania speedrun. I thought the Castlevania Speedruns Discord server had one of those emotes for sure. I'm still looking at the old Piano Torius emotes that I somehow got into the server like years ago. Yeah, I thought for sure there was a not like this emote. Oh, there's a can't make it one. Yeah, I'm sorry to hear about that, Ron. And I'm now legitimately convinced you're going to take my world record. Yeah, nice. Potential 3x run. So, should I go for that or just let someone else take it? Without even trying. Now that, I wonder if I just, like, let that slip by without even trying. Or at least take a shot at it myself. I mean, it was still at least a good 5 months or so I had the Trevor Only world record. I mean, it's not like I lost it just yet, but it's probably going to be gone in no time at this rate. I'm gonna have to see that boost too. Yeah, when I go back to... Yeah, since we're talking about, like, Stage 6, and the Cypher route basically just has, like, the same first half, because... I mean, level 4 has no ice spell at all. Level 5, for the most part, you're just boosting through enemies to just get through the stage faster. And Cypher takes more damage, so it's preferable to do that as Trevor. And not too many places to take advantage of the ice spell with Cypher in 5. Same goes for 6. And in 6, you're also just running through a lot of enemies, which is significantly faster than killing them, so... Yeah, that's how that applies. And not Trevor only. Yeah, so that's how that ends up getting routed. And then level 7 suddenly, talking about Upper Root Castlevania 3 here, suddenly, ice spell's like literally the first candle you break. Plus there are several places just save lots of time by properly doing like skips off of Frozen Fleamen. And also Frozen Bone Pillar as well. If nothing else, I suppose we should be thankful, so on and so forth. To be sure, that would have been even harder on her, but Kaneda herself didn't seem particularly depressed. Maybe she was just counting herself lucky to have survived. If anything, I'm likely going to be getting off the stream soon. I think I must have been live for at least an hour or so. I suppose she might just have been the sort not sort on the small stuff. She didn't whine about the gash in her head, by the same token, she wouldn't have come to have the wound treated unless we called for her. We have a more pressing concern at the moment, Hiruka-san. Yes? Very sorry it took me so long to notice. What are you talking about? The reason you've been refusing your food. As she spoke, Kazuki reached out for the zipper of Haruka-san's tightly closed sleeping bag. Wait, please, no! I understand that it's embarrassing, but we can't just leave it like this. What's in that sleeping bag? Kazuki's voice was far more gentle than I ever heard it before. Nonetheless, Haruka-san broke into painful, bitter sobs like a child begging for forgiveness. She turned her head to the side, her gaze coming to rest on me, her fat teardrops rolling down her cheeks. Amane, would you be so kind as to boil me some hot water? How much? About a bucketful. No need to rush, but I would appreciate it. Yeah, sure. As I turned to leave, a sharp new smell cut through the stuffy air of the tent, and I finally understood the situation. Haruka-san soiled herself? Right, at the moment she couldn't even stand up in her own power. With a little maneuvering, she'd probably be able to handle number 1 by herself, but number 2 would absolutely require external resistance. Haruka-san had always been the most timid and introverted member of our team. Even under the best of circumstances, she found it difficult to assert herself. She must have simply been too humiliated to ask for the help she needed. In other words, she had been refusing food for the last few days out of sheer terror producing waste. It all fell horribly into place in an instant. Her body racked with sobs, Haruka-san buried her face in her hands. Kazuki spoke to her again, her voice like a comforting caress. You have nothing to be ashamed of. It's a natural part of being alive. Still slightly unsettled by Kazuki's uncharacteristic kindness, I hastily left the tent. What's up with that, Kazuki? There's no way she'd ever be that nice to me. All of a sudden, there was a complex and intense mixture of feelings, unease, irritation, anxiety, and others I couldn't quite put into words, swirling unpleasantly around my chest. If you like Haruka that much, why don't you marry her? Hold on a second here, self. What did you just say? I mean, you almost think I was jealous here or something? Oh, now I think about it, maybe I really am a little jealous. But Kazuki and I are both girls, so... No, what exactly is going on here? Sometimes pet dogs get all cranky when they see their master doting on somebody else's mutt. Maybe this is something similar? I knew it was downright weird for me to be feeling this way, but the irritation was real and it wasn't going away. Maybe I should just throw away my dignity to the wind and give her a nasty bite the next time she tries to give me a treat? Unless I'm very much mistaken, you're thinking some exceptionally silly thoughts right now. Kazuki? What? I don't know what you're talking about. Trust you more than anyone else, relying on you. That's a fact. Wherever I may go, in the end I'll return to you. All you need to do is wait with dignity and confidence. What are you talking about? Really don't understand? I'm telling you, you're indispensable to me. Come here, Amane. You're bleeding from the neck. Oh yeah, the leech bit me. But it doesn't hurt, so don't worry about it. And she almost got attacked by several more on the way out of the forest. Look, the blood's still flowing. If we leave it be, it'll be bleeding for hours, you know? Hurry up and get over here. Wait a minute. After briefly running her tongue along the area of the leech bite, she began to suck on the wound. And then we get this romantic music. Stop! Wait, Kazuki, not so hard. You're gonna suck it right out of me. Don't worry, I'll suck out every last drop. Oh, sucking it right out of her neck? What the hell is this? Why does she have to? Why does it have to be so pointlessly erotic? Kazuki's lips, they're small and soft and kind of feel nice. Okay, truth, I'm completely soft right now. Oh, this isn't good. Now I'm getting in a weird mood. I am currently soft. She sucked the blood and anticoagulant out of my neck until her mouth was full, spat out, that came right back for more. I understand she was performing medical treatment, but every time Kazuki's lips touched me, my body quivered. Every time she exhaled through her nose, her breath tickled my cheek and strange little noises leaked out of my mouth. In a daze, my eyes half closed, I whimpered nasally. Took a good minute for you to notice that Sakuma-senpai was standing nearby, her arms folded, taking in the whole scene with a smirk on her face. Wow, gotta say, you two are pretty brazen. No, you've got it all wrong. This isn't what you think. She's just sucking the... Right, a leech! It was a leech! Don't take this the wrong way, she's just sucking! I got bitten by a leech in the forest and the bleeding wouldn't stop, so Kazuki just started sucking. Don't get me wrong, I'm not casting any stones here. Love comes in many shapes and sizes, in my humble opinion. I'm trying to tell you, this isn't an act of love or anything. She's just treating my wound. Licking each other's wounds is an act of love? We were trying to convince all the excuses anyway. I understand how enjoyable it is to bully Amane, but that's my special privilege as our partner. Please refrain from teasing her too much, Sakuma. What a tyrant. Amane belongs to everyone, you know. Well, feel free to think so if you please. So what is it then? Did you have some business with my Amane? You got a surprisingly possessive side, huh? Well, whatever. You're making a toilet, right? The captain stopped by a while ago and told us we should come over to help if we weren't busy. That'd be a big help. Thank you. Don't mention it. You don't got anything there to do. And when I'm not doing something, I get all depressed. When I'm moving my body, I don't feel quite so miserable. Sitting on my hands all day makes me feel way more worn out. So anyway, we'll be borrowing Amane for a bit. My apologies, Kazami. Do make sure to handle her with great care. It's fine. If she starts thinking it was some community mate who's always got at her beck and call, your life's gonna get even harder. A little absence makes the heart grow, whatever. Come on, let's go. Okay, so, yeah, Sakuma and Amane are gonna go off to make a toilet at the bottom of the ravine. Okay, so, yeah, Amane and her basketball team have now been stuck down at the bottom of the ravine, cut off from society for like a good 7 days. So, taking the boost off the Axe Titan 60 makes sub-28 Cypher more doable. Yeah, I do believe that's also gonna end up becoming possible eventually as well. A 28 OX, that's pretty much like a gimme already. That should be manageable enough from what I've seen. But just 27 something, just something under 28 minutes. That I seriously wonder. Not if, but how it's going to be like exactly possible. Like, what else is going to need to be found? I mean, not gonna lie, I could definitely do some looking and just try whatever, and you never know, I might just surprise myself. Alright, so I've been live for... okay, about 90 minutes, so I'll just end the stream here and Amane Route Part 8, and we're still gonna be at the bottom of this valley. After falling from a cliff 200 meters in a bus, we're still gonna be stuck